I'm Dean Obeidallah, my friends, and the person on with me right now needs no introduction. It's Jim Acosta, longtime White House correspondent, CNN anchor, author of a New York Times bestselling book, The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America, and now has the truly wildly popular Substack Live show, The Jim Acosta Show. It is Jim Acosta. Jim, nice to see you, my friend. Thanks for making time.
Hey, Dean, great to be on with you. Really appreciate it.
And look, I used to go on your show periodically, so you asked me
Yeah.
questions. Now I finally, Jim, and I've had questions all the times I went on. I'm like, I want to ask Jim something. It was a one-way street. I couldn't do it. So now
No, of
I can.
course.
So look, your book from 2019, and I was looking back at it because I think I did interview you about it, The Enemy of the People, A Dangerous Time to Tell the Truth in America. It's 2019. It seems more
Yeah.
relevant and resonates more true today in that Trump was different the first time. Like he went after you, try to take
Yeah.
your press pass. Now he's coming after media outlets, universities, lawyers, law firms. This is unlike anything we've seen. Last night, signed an executive order to defund NPR and PBS, which is questionable legally, but that's what he's doing. Is it more, as someone who lived through the first time, is he a more dangerous person this time?
Oh, unquestionably, he's much more dangerous this time around, and the climate is more dangerous this time around, and it has to be called out. I mean, back in those days when I was covering the Trump White House, and yeah, they went after my press pass. We had to go to court to get it back. It was a Trump appointed judge who gave it back to us, and so on. Flash forward to Trump 2.0, and they're going after entire news organizations. They're going after the Associated Press because the AP won't adopt the silly Gulf of America name. He blocked them from going in the Oval Office and on Air Force One. And, I've been a little disappointed in the reaction from my friends in the press corps in D.C. There should have been a much more unified sign of solidarity coming from the D.C. press corps. We didn't quite see that, but ultimately the AP was somewhat successful in court. But it just goes to show you Trump is raising the stakes this time around, and he is going on this campaign of revenge and retribution, and that's going to include the press. There's no question about it.
Yeah, NPR did a really good article this week about Donald Trump's more than 100 targets in 100 days. And I have to be like, I'm a student of politics. I love politics. Even Richard Nixon with John Dean, they had an enemies list, but they kept that quiet.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is brazen and open, and there's a message he's trying to send there. And you get a sense it really is to cause others to self-censor and stifle criticism and dissent.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I mean, when he goes after the AP in that fashion, I mean, it sends a message to other news organizations. You better watch out what you say. You better watch out how you report things. And as you and I both know, Dean, Trump is not in touch with reality. When he goes on ABC News the other night, speaking with Terry Moran, and he's insisting that the tattoos on Kilmar's knuckles say MS-13 when that was clearly Photoshop. I mean, that just goes to show you he's just lost touch with the real world. And, even though it's been pointed out to him time and again that this is Photoshop, he just proceeds and continues to lie. And so, he is going after not just news organizations, but the truth itself. And that's why it's more important than ever for news organizations, for journalists, people on independent media like you and I, what we're doing here. For folks to stiffen their spine and stand their ground and continue to insist on the truth. Because, I mean, imagine a world where, it's just the sycophantic, new media jackals who go into Caroline Levitt's new media briefing, asking these fawning questions and so on. I mean, I just ask folks out there watching right now, imagine if that was the totality of the American news media. I mean, we're talking, that's a very Orwellian scenario, but it is indeed the scenario that Donald Trump wants. Just this week, the White House came out with their own version of the Drudge Report. I guess they're so hooked on looking at the Drudge Report, but because Drudge is tough on Trump, they don't want to see that. So they create another version of the Drudge Report from the White House for the dear leader. So he can look at it and say, oh, this is what the Drudge Report should look like. It's nuts. It's bananas, and the press just has to call it out.
And the question is, and I think what you said, we all agree with. People watching frustration with the bigger legacy media outlets is backed up by polling. There are some great journalists in the corporate media world, but is there something about the way corporate media is set up, about a for-profit business, and that having access is an important part of that? Does that play a role in the media not being as, I'm not sure the right word we would say, but no BS both siding,
Yeah.
that's calling it the way it is and not being afraid of saying Trump is lying or he's detached from reality
Yeah.
or he's literally fabricating evidence to put a man in prison in the case of Abrego Garcia. Is there something in the corporate media model that makes that harder to do?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. There are some people in the press with the brand name outlets who are doing a good
Mhm.
job. I'm a huge
Sure.
fan of Daniel Dale and so on. Um, but you raise a very good point, and we're in a very, I think, difficult moment for the press in this country, for the institution of the free press in this country. I mean, look what happened just in the past week. The executive producer of 60 Minutes stepped down and acknowledged publicly that he did not feel like he had the kind of editorial independence to run that program. And as I've been saying on my show, and I've been saying to others, when 60 Minutes is in trouble, we're all in trouble in this country. And when you have places like ABC paying a big $15 million settlement to build a Trump library because of a meritless lawsuit that Trump filed against ABC. Again, you can't have a situation where the press is bending the knee in this country or trying to cut deals in exchange for access or favorable treatment. I mean, there's a story out right now that CBS may settle another ridiculous, meritless lawsuit in order to grease the skids for a corporate deal that they're trying to finalize. And so it does, I think, go back to a larger problem that we have in this country, and that is when you have corporate media ownership and you have administrations like the Trump administration with the ability to sign off on mergers and acquisitions and other corporate deals, it creates a cloud of a conflict of interest. And it gives the administration leverage over these news outlets that I don't think we want to have in this country because and the people out there are smart enough to sniff this stuff out. If people can sniff this out and figure out that, okay, maybe they're pulling their punches or maybe they're not sending their toughest people in there because they're worried about this deal or that acquisition or this merger. That's not a good situation in this country. And Trump knows all too well, Dean. You know this too. He knows how to exploit that.
Very much so. And,
Yeah.
these are for profit businesses, generally publicly traded. The corporate executives are charged with the responsibility to increase shareholder stock prices. And that's part of their job, right? To turn a
Yeah,
profit. And if
exactly.
cutting a deal with Donald Trump and giving him $15 million in the case of ABC can buy you some peace and make more money, these guys are going to do it. Now, what we
Yeah.
learned with ABC, Jim, they give him 15 million. That bought them 2.5 months of peace because Brendan Carr, FCC chair, 2 weeks ago opened an investigation to ABC Disney's DEI practices, and not just present, going in the past.
Yeah.
And as a lawyer myself, I know what this means. They have to go hire outside counsel. It's going to cost them millions of dollars to do this. And so all they got for $15 million was protection money for 2.5 months. And I
Yeah.
wonder if other media outlets see that and go like, we're not buying him off. He's going to come back like a mobster and go, okay, I want more money now, and I want more, and I want more. He's not going to end. It's insatiable.
Yeah, that's right. It's an intimidation racket, and it's very mafia-like. Trump is acting like the Godfather. There's no question about it. And you're right. I've talked about this on my show. If you feed the monster and the monster wants food, and you give the monster what he wants, the monster's he's gonna want more. And I mean, it's a pretty simple proposition. I mean, the same thing goes with universities and law firms when they bend the knee or they pop a quarter in the Trump intimidation racket toll booth. It is just going to encourage more bad behavior. And so these news organizations, when it's a meritless lawsuit, okay, yes, we understand you have a merger or an acquisition or some kind of corporate deal in the works. You have to think about the larger picture. You have to think about what's better for the country, not just what's in your own self-interest. And to me, it really it calls upon these news organizations to put country first and do the right thing here. Do not bend the knee because you're just going to make matters worse. It's going to be another news organization, another TV company, another newspaper that's going to be caught in the same vice in a few months from now, and then they'll be put on the spot. And when you have to ask the answer or ask the question, when does it stop?
And that's the question. What's Trump's end
Yeah,
game? And
yeah,
look, this guy from dealing with him. I think it says a lot. I know you love dogs, right? You've got a rescue dog. You love, is the dog's name Duke? Is that the
Duke,
dog's name?
he's kind of he's making a little racket over there right now as we
Right.
speak.
So you got a dog.
Yeah,
Donald Trump is the first president since
yeah,
Polk not to have a dog. I love dogs. I actually think it says something about him as a person that he does not
yeah.
see the beauty of the companionship of a dog who really is a great friend.
Well, I'm sure Trump thinks like, well, what is this dog going to do for me? You know, it's like everything's so transactional with him. You know, you can't do a quid pro quo with a dog. I mean, I guess you can get him to sit in exchange for a treat. But for Trump, who has sort of the ADHD of like of a 12-year-old, you know, that's only going to last for so long. I mean, you know, there's so many different ways to psychoanalyze him. You know, Dean, I mean, I'm thinking back to the Biden days when Biden is in the White House and Fox every night, Sean Hannity, those guys every night going after Joe Biden. He's diminished. He's this, he's that. And then you have Donald Trump in the Oval Office insisting that we call the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. He's insisting that the tattoos on Kilmar's knuckles are actually tattoos on his knuckles. That is bonkers shit. He
Yeah.
sounds like a poster child for the 25th Amendment when he is saying things like that. And I'm not even the first person to say that. Remember Sean Hannity around January 6th was saying, you know, if this keeps up, we're going to have to think about the 25th Amendment. I mean, you know, this is why it's so important that we have places like Substack, why we have places like YouTube, where you know you have independent media. They're able to thrive. They're able to speak their mind. They're able to do what they want to do in this country, and not be intimidated by the mob boss over at the White House. I mean, it's just that simple. So yeah, you could get him a dog, but I mean, you know, considering the track record of some of the members of the administration when it comes to pets, I'm not sure you want to do that.
Yeah, I don't even know if that can show him the love he needs. And there's something, I'm not trying to psychoanalyze him. There's something
Yeah.
deeply wrong. That cabinet meeting earlier this week, there's dictators around the world embarrassed by that. They go, that was a
Yeah.
bit much. Like the sucking up. But look, Jim, you mentioned independent media. I see Donald Trump as a person who is not going to allow dissent and allow independent media to thrive if it becomes a threat to him. And at some point, he might
Yeah.
come after Substack. He might come after YouTube. I mean, are you concerned about that based on his track record? That's a next frontier for him.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I sort of feel like, you know, the possibilities are limitless, I suppose, because you know his narcissism and his insecurities are that limitless. And you know, my concern is that you know at this point, what the American people need to understand is that there are people like you and me, others who are trying to make a go of it over here in independent media because it's a necessary thing. It's an important thing. And the truth just has to get out there. And I mean, look at what took place. You were mentioning that cabinet meeting the other day. My God. I mean, I do a segment on my show called the Dear Leader Files. And I gave an award to Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, Employee of the Month for the Dear Leader Files, because honestly, you know, when you're going around the table and she's saying, you know, this is the greatest presidency in the history of the world ever, period. Mr. President, oh my goodness. It's just embarrassing. It's like you're the Attorney General of the United States. My God, have some dignity, have some respect for yourself. And they're just going, I mean, and I saw this during the first Trump administration, you know, sort of giving him the Kim Jong-un treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I thought, you know, Mike Pence was always the one who sort of took the cake when it came to just really, you know, lavishing praise upon Donald Trump and so on. But these guys just outdo it by leaps and bounds. And Elon Musk with two different hats on. What's going on there? I thought we were eliminating waste, fraud, and abuse. You know, he's got two hats on. I don't know what's happening there, but you know, that was just, it was like, yeah, you're right. It's what are we watching here? You know, this is like they're trying to reenact Saturday Night Live before Saturday Night Live comes on the air. It's amazing.
Well, Pam, the one thing about Mike Pence, and it so conjures up memories of what Mike Pence did. And what did Donald Trump do? He turned a crowd on his own vice president to hang him and refused to stop a crowd. So no one there in that room even cares about that because they don't think it's going to be them. I'm sure there's people sitting around Saddam Hussein who thought like, he loves me. Saddam Hussein then the next day would go out and you'd be gone. All right. So And Pam Bondi, I'm surprised she just didn't sing it like Marilyn Monroe to John Kennedy. I mean, it was really like that, Mr. President. She
Yeah.
was almost singing.
You're waiting for her to jump out of a cake or something.
Right. It was
Yeah.
like either a head cheerleader or someone's having a relationship with the boss. That was the energy.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is
Yeah, it was sort of like
uncomfortable to
Is it
watch.
Mean Girls? Which is is it the Mean Girls movie where is it Election with Reese? I'm trying to remember the movie where the cheerleader gets out there in front of the class in the gymnasium and she's like, you just don't know how hard it is for us to come
Election.
out here and do this every day and try to get everybody. It's just like that kind. It's like, trying to make fetch happen. It's pretty sad. It's pretty
And I
sad.
saw that's very interesting. So look, when you say the role of independent media, and there's no commentary on your former employers, but is there just inherently just more freedom? I mean, you pick the stories, you're the producer here,
Oh, was
you're
it
the
fast?
writer, you're
Yeah.
everything. You do
Yeah.
everything here. I mean, I'm sure you did a lot there. I'm sure you wrote your own monologues and stuff that were
Yeah.
important. I've no doubt. And I played your last one on my show, on my radio show, because I'm like, this is good stuff.
Yeah.
But I always admired you pushed up hard against things. But was there times that, here you don't have to self-censor at all. Here you don't have to think about, well, if I do this, it's going to cause this kind of reaction. And some
Yeah.
way, do you even lean into that even more? Going, good. I'm hoping this caused the conversation that I want.
Well, and I think people are mentioning it was Fast Times at Ridgemont High, so maybe that was what it was. I apologize.
Fast
My bad.
times.
It's late in the week. I'm getting I'm getting my movie references are getting rusty at the end of the week here, but
Fast Times. Was it? I love all three. These are the movies we grew up to. Just pick up
I,
Caddyshack next. I love
oh
Caddyshack. So just someone
man,
has a Caddyshack. One of the defining moments of my comedy was Caddyshack and Ghostbusters. So
God, I
that we're
love
really
those
dating
movies.
us.
Those are the
Ferris
best.
Bueller.
You can't. It's hard to outdo that era when it comes to comedy classics. There's no question about it. But no, I mean, one of the things I've been doing on the show is like today. Occasionally I do what I call fuck it Friday, where we just say fuck it. It's the end of the week. Let's just let it loose. And I've had relatives say to me, I noticed that you curse now on your show, on your Substack show. I'm like, oh fuck yeah, I do. What the fuck? Why not? And I apologize, Dean, if this is a family program. My
No, it's
apologies.
not
But
anymore. You've changed it, Jim. I love
yeah,
to change the
no,
tenor. No, it's fine. Come on.
no, but
This is
honestly,
free.
it's funny. I was talking to Jason Isaacs, the actor, today. He's going to be on my show later today, and he was talking about sort of the magic of White Lotus in this moment.
Mhm.
And I think he's onto something. We all sort of need this sort of collective catharsis right now, and we're all just desperate for that to occur. And I think that's what that show does. And to some extent, I think maybe people just, they saw me in my old stiff role where I was wearing the suit and the tie, and I had to, I did be very careful to make sure we both sides and the left and the right. Although I hated doing that, and I tried not to do that as much as humanly possible. But I did say bullshit every now and then. And when
Yeah, you
Donald Trump
did.
said shithole countries, I did have permission at one point to say shithole countries, but I couldn't say fuck it, And so now it's like, and that's just become sort of like the mission statement for this next era. It's like, fuck it. We're just going to go out there and tell the truth until that doesn't work anymore.
By the way, did Jason Isaacs, did he say Popper, please? Because everyone's just dying for him to do that. That's the line. Like,
Piper,
it's
no. He did do a
Popper,
little bit of a
no.
Piper, no. He did a little bit of a
Popper,
Piper,
no.
no.
That was really that accent.
Yeah.
And I read that he based it on a politician from North Carolina because everyone's like, what is this? And then his wife, who was a great actress, she had her own cadence, which if you watch the show, you start repeating that cadence the minute you get outside. You're like, the people are wide tone. Yeah. Like, don't stop that.
No, he talks about that, and I got him to talk about how I guess Duke University got really mad at him because he was wearing these Duke shirts, and so he talked about that. It's a pretty funny conversation, and it gets very serious too because he talks about this new movie that he's in that Sean Penn produced and Eric Swalwell of all people also produced called Words of War. And it harkens back to what you and I were talking about at the beginning of the conversation. It's about the murder of a Russian journalist way back in 2006. And this was sort of the beginning stages of Vladimir Putin going after the press and crushing the press and in Russia, which they didn't really ever have the kind of independent press that we have here in the United States. But it is an important thing to talk about. And I mean, this weekend, it's World Press Freedom Day. And honestly, I mean, these are things that we got to hold on to in this country. We can't have a situation in America where, Donald Trump can start to do to the press in this country what Vladimir Putin has done to the press and done to journalists in Russia. And some of this has to do with corporations and the oligarchy and so on. You can't have these media companies in the hands of a small number of powerful individuals, well-connected individuals. And, when you talk about going after institutions like the Associated Press, it says to me, and cutting the funding to NPR and PBS, it says to me what he's trying to do is slowly but surely tighten the noose around the free press in America and stifle it and suffocate it and intimidate it and weaken it to the point where people are at a crossroads and they decide, okay, well, I guess we'll just give in and do what he wants. And we just can't have that in this country. And that's my attitude about this. And that's why I continue to do my show. When I left my old place, I thought, maybe I'll just go screw around and travel around the world and cash in some miles and points and so on. And, when Donald Trump comes into office and he pardons all the January 6th rioters and insurrectionists, and he starts going after the press, and Elon Musk did what he did at Trump's inauguration. That was just disgusting. I thought, you know what? I can't do this. I can't go on a plane and go on vacation. I got to get back to work. And if it means doing a show on Substack, that's what I'm going to do. And that's why it's so damn important that we continue to hold their feet to the fire, because people are counting on us, and people got worried. They got pretty afraid when Trump was coming into office and all this crazy shit was happening. And to me, that made me say to myself, okay, we got a job to do here. He has to be held accountable for this stuff. And yes, he may have gotten off scot-free with a lot of these trials and stuff before the 2024 election. And yes, he got back into office and so on and so forth. That doesn't wipe away the need to hold his feet to the fire, hold him accountable, and then insist on the truth. And if he wants to lie, and he wants to do that day in and day out, multiple times a day. I remember covering this at the White House. He would lie multiple times a day. He is capable of just breaking any fact checker that is known to man. But that doesn't mean we stop what we're doing. And I know people are saying, oh, well, the press, they're letting us. There are a lot of folks who are doing good work out there. And as Substack likes to say, the media is not broken. It's on Substack, And so, there are lots of different places now where you can get information, where you can get the truth. And that's what we have to do. We have to keep doing it.
And you're doing it, Jim. And that's why you have such credibility, and people come to you and watch your show. And it's very popular, the Jim Acosta show. I know people watching right now or listening are familiar with it. If not, go sign up for it. But Jim, look, these are difficult times. Donald Trump's FCC chair, Brendan Carr, is going right from Project 2025. Yeah. He helped write it, going after NBC, CBS, PBS. We've never seen this brazen attempt. It's beyond playing the referees, which Trump talks about. Yeah. This is really shutting down some to make an example. But Jim, I want to thank you.
The FCC is not supposed to be a national censorship board. It's not supposed to be, he's not supposed to be like the minder over at the Kremlin deciding what is the truth and what is not the truth. We have the First Amendment. We have the right to freedom of speech. We have the right to freedom of the press, to peaceably assemble for a redress of grievances. That is who we are. That's who we are as Americans. And, some of these guys just need to get a grip. Like, you can't be criticized. What kind of a man-child are you where you can't be criticized? Honestly, get a fucking grip. That's what some of these people need to do. And part of me, I get a little fired up sometimes, and it's the Cuban and Irish temper in me or whatever. But it also is because, like, Dean, you and I are long in the tooth enough. We've been around this country long enough. We understand what it was. We were talking about Caddyshack and so on earlier. We understand what it was like to grow up in this country when the FCC wasn't acting like a goddamn censorship board. They just need to cut it out. And I tend to think that what you're going to need to see, not only these news organizations and TV companies growing a spine, you're going to need to see legal defense funds for journalists. You're going to need to see people coming to the rescue of journalists when they come under fire, because, we're only 100 or so days in, folks. Strap in. This is going to be going on for a while.
We could be doing this show next time, prison in El Salvador. but at least we'll be
Yeah.
together hanging out, right, Jim? All the people on
Yeah.
Substack, all the writers here. So,
Yeah.
Jim, thank you very much for spending some
You
time
bet.
with me. It was great. And hopefully a couple of months, we'll have a conversation. I'm always available to go on yours, either one. But thank you,
Would
my
love
friend.
that.
And keep up your great work. You're
Thanks a
really
lot,
an
Dean.
inspiration to me and so many others, I say with all sincerity. So thank you, brother.
I appreciate it. Great to talk to you. Thanks, Dean.
Thanks.